Hello everybody, it's Ellie Diecast. We're back and we're going to take a look at the new diorama. I did not do a how I made this one series of videos. I know some of you had asked. Here at the show we kind of have two groups. We've got the diorama group and we got the Hot Wheels group. Diorama group had wanted more how-to videos. The how-to videos are a little bit trickier for me to do on the dioramas just because they're bigger and I have to work around the cameras and I don't have a lot of space, so this one I decided not to. A few things different about this one from previous versions. I'm going to zoom out here before we get into the cars. Ignore the folded green screen back there. The base of this, so from the road down and all down on the side of the base, that's the regular insulation foam. And just happen to have some here. That is this foam, and you can get this from Home Depot. It's usually in the building section, the wood section, and usually when I find it, it's by the drywall. It's the same type of foam you would use to insulate a room from sound. And it cuts really well. The only drawback to that foam is it's really hard to carve. You can't use too much to it. And I don't have a hot enough heat knife to cut through the foam. So I usually just carve it with X-Acto knives or sand it down. And it does fine. This time around though, I did do something different with the rocks. And I'll show you the product I used. I'm not sure I'm going to do it this way again. It was an experiment. And I used this stuff, which is that foam that you can stick into gaps and cracks. Usually, again, you use this when you are insulating your house. And it has this little nozzle on the front of it. Basically, you spray that on to the diorama, and that is all those puffy rocks that you see. And this stuff is really easy to carve, super easy. So my thought was maybe I could use that for things like rock faces and it would work great. A couple things about it. First of all, it takes quite a long time to dry before you can actually carve it. So that part I didn't really like. It took a little bit longer than I needed. Also, I either need to coat the foam with something or come up with an intermediate step because it cracks. And you can see there's a crack right there. Now here, I don't really mind it on this diorama. I'm only showing it to you because, well, some people asked how I do these. I don't think I would use that foam technique again. I'd probably just go back to stacking the foam that I used here on the base and then carving it down. You get a different look. What I was really trying to get away from is the plaster cast rocks that I've shown here on the channel before. Those work great. That's how most people do it. They just add weight, and I was looking for a better way to move these dioramas around for shows, but I think I'm just going to go back to the cast rocks on the next one. They look, I think these look pretty good, but the cast rocks I think look a little bit better. And the cracking, even though it's not really an issue here so much, it would be an issue if I was doing a different type of rock, or say like a ground plane, something like that. I'm going to go ahead and take the camera off the tripod here for a second and give you some close-ups. Also tried to work on the intermediate details, which is something I haven't really been able to do. I'll show you those cracks I was talking about if I can get in close here. The cracks on top I think actually turned out good. They look kind of like broken rock faces, but you can see there's some larger cracks in there. There's a little bit of white flecked in those cracks. Those are the new ones. Every time I would spray this down with the Mod Podge glue mixture to glue grass, it would crack a little bit more. So obviously not the perfect scenario. Also did try some different trees. This tree here is a different type of tree that I made myself. Pretty happy with it. I think it can be formed a little bit better, but since we're only going to see really about the bottom half of this in the show, I thought it was fine. But here's those intermediate details that I was talking about. I used a combination of old leaves ground up, some found rocks and different sized gravel to embed in the plaster that went over that foam. And then I painted that along with the plaster and then went over with more details. Also got these little tufts. There's one there, get a close-up of it. These little tuft grasses I got on eBay, and you can see they show up everywhere, and that added a lot of detail. Oops, sorry about the cord there. You can see there's some more of that intermediate detail that I was trying to get. Lastly, I did use a longer grass. That is a 12mm grass, which best I can find only seems to come from Europe. I don't know why. The grass I usually use is like this grass up here, and I've always felt like it was too short. It just looks like it's flocking or fuzzy. And so I used it in some spots, but I really like the longer grass. I think 6mm grass is really the answer, but I don't have any of that yet. Lastly, you'll be noticing that water. Now the water was done differently than I've done it before. If you watched our last how-to video, I used a product that was an acrylic base, and I'll get that here. Ignore the camera bouncing around. This is what I used the last time around. This product works really well for really thin little puddles. I did get it to work, and it will work for deeper water if you really want to make it work. And if you're interested in that, watch the last how-to video I did on the diorama. But I wasn't that happy with it. It's not great for the deep water. This time around, I used a resin. I'm going to go ahead and put this back on the tripod here. There we go. And I used a resin. The resin is the winner by far. I use this stuff. It's called Super Glaze. It's a two-part system, obviously part A, part B, and it comes with instructions. If you've never used this stuff before, it's really great. It dries completely clear. It dries really pretty quickly. It was set within probably a half hour, and it was completely dry within 24 hours, and that was way better than the acrylic. The only thing I will say about it is if you're going to use that resin, and by the way, I got that Super Glaze at Home Depot. You may have to ask for it. It's in the paint section, but I found it very hard to find. I had to ask, and they still didn't know what I was talking about. It's what you use on countertops, so if you need to describe it, like cement or wood countertops. Getting back to the resin, it puts off a lot of heat, like most of those two-part resins. And it does get hot, so if you're pouring it on a large surface and it's going to be thick, you can't have anything that it's being poured on that it will melt. And so what that means is a couple things. First of all, you can't pour it on top of the acrylic. I did, because I changed my mind halfway through and I was able to disguise the problems, but it'll melt that acrylic. Also, if you embed anything like little wood pieces or anything that traps air, the air bubbles escaping from the wood will dry into the resin because it dries so fast. And that's one of the advantages of that acrylic, is it dries so slow that the air bubbles can rise to the surface. Anyway, something to keep track of. Okay, so let's zoom in here and see how this guy's gonna really work for our needs. Obviously, we're using driving cars down here. I got some L-case cars that we can drive through here just so you can see the scale. And if you've been watching the show, you know this is kind of how we do this. Of course, we usually set up a little bit better, but we'll get by. So there's our charger. That's the 15 Charger SRT from the L-case. I guess we're gonna mix a bit of a review here in with this. This is the Dodge Dart. Let's scoot this over, try a different angle here of this. I do get some questions, again, usually from the crowd that's into the dioramas. why I do these shapes with usually with the mountains in the background. It has a real distinct background and foreground, and that's because of using them here in the video. That's the night shifter. Using them here in the video, the foregrounds can't be too high or my camera will focus on the foreground in between cars and it will fade in and out. It'll get fuzzy as it tries to refocus. But if it's kind of a low foreground like this, then you won't really have it. It won't do that. And the backgrounds are usually designed to either work with a green screen or not. This one is not because it's got that high background, so you would never see the green screen. So usually, I'll push this up, there's usually a green screen back there, and then I drop a background in on that green. But a little secret, if you're going to do green screens, don't put trees up there, because your trees will disappear when you drop out the green, and all that green grass will drop out when I do the green. I could get a different color green screen in the background, but I'm too lazy. I don't want to buy one. Here is our Nissan 180SX. This guy did, full disclosure, he fell in the water bucket right before we started shooting when I unwrapped it, flipped out of my hands into the water bucket, so. Oh well, yeah, we don't really collect them here for any money, so that's all right. Here is the Camaro SS. This one is brand new, but it really got beat up in its packaging. I didn't notice that when I got it. Yeah, I don't really care, but something to be aware of. I'm going to scoot this over. We'll get a better view of this. Let's see what we can do with a little bit of an angle here. Yep. And we've got the, what is this? This is a Charger. No, sorry, Camaro ZL1 2017 Camaro. Also, if you're wondering why the water is so deep, you're really not going to see it, obviously. That was because I wanted to experiment with it, and it was just a good way to do it. Had I known that it was going to work out that well, I would have actually cut out this little grass plateau or level here, and I would have just blocked in the water so that it would have looked like you're driving along the shore. But I didn't really think it was going to work very well, and so I wanted to kind of hide it in case I messed it up, but it actually turned out better than I thought. And lastly, we've got, at least for our little experiment here, we've got the Camaro Special Edition. This is the 2015 Hot Wheels Camaro Special Edition with the L-Case. Lots of Camaros we're getting. I don't have all the L-Case cars yet, and probably won't do a review as it turns out. They've been a little inconsistent. So, once again, I'll show you this water before we go. I don't think I really got a very good shot of that. And this is that resin. See that little fuzzy white spot right there and right there? That is the Mod Podge glue that I use for the ripples on the surface. I use the high gloss Mod Podge glue to make the ripples on the surface. It dries completely clear, but those little fuzzy spots will take about a week to dry. The last of the Mod Podge takes a long time to dry. They'll dry clear. But you can see down in there, and see those big air bubbles down in the bottom. I don't know if they'll show up on video, which I'm fine with the way they turned out, because all of the refraction from the light with that Mod Podge kind of hides it. You can see a lot of air bubbles show up there on the video. It looks like they actually aren't that visible. The light's just hitting them right. But see that big air bubble down there, right down there? That is from when I first poured in the acrylic. So there was acrylic on the bottom, and when I poured in the resin got so hot that it melted the acrylic and got underneath it and caused air bubbles. Which I kind of knew was going to happen, but the only other option was to tear out all the acrylic and repaint it, and I didn't think it was ever going to be seen, so I didn't actually think it was going to turn out very well. The bottom of the water is painted a darker blue so that it makes it look a little bit deeper. It's not actually as deep as it looks here. Also, the The resin was tinted very light green so that it would look a little bit more realistic. So there you go. Whoops, sorry. So there you go, yeah, another diorama. We'll see more of this guy in future shows. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.